Dr. Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Hey, Wes.
How you doing?
Doing good. It's been a good day. It's beautiful here in North Carolina. How's it out there that way?
It's going good. It's going good. How about you guys?
Good. I'm riding
Ron?
around. I've got a 15-year-old that's trying to kill me. She's driving for the first time, and I'm in the back seat. So wish me luck.
You're in the back seat.
I'm in the back. I have a chauffeur now.
All right. So one of the topics I wanted to talk about today was the lack of good quality employees. And I wanted to kind of kick this off in terms of what I've seen first. So I think, 20 years ago when I got started 25 years ago, there was a lot of great employees. It was, I don't know, it seemed like there was many great leaders. And then over the years, it seemed to dwindle and dwindle. And now it seems very difficult to find great people. And I want to open this up and definitely want Chris, you to talk about it. But first, Ron, tell me what you have noticed. Have you noticed the same thing, this problem?
Yes. In all positions, assistants, front office, hygienists, I've seen some improvement with hygiene availability in specific locations in the country. Other areas, it's worse than it's ever been. I have a client in Minneapolis, and there just are essentially no hygienists to hire, none. And it doesn't, even, we haven't quite gone to the point, Chris, that you did, which was essentially hit the top level of East Coast, West Coast hygiene pay, which will do it. But then that brings in some other challenges when you make that change. And we had someone a few weeks ago bring up that topic and said they've just had to recalculate their expectations on profit margins coming out of hygiene. Because when you're paying the amount that we used to pay for a dentist, as much as $600 a day, sometimes even more, it's you're just not going to get the profitability out of hygiene that you did. So that's an issue. But again, in Minneapolis and a few other areas, they just can't find hygienists. There just aren't any out there. Assistants, it's picking up some, but a lot of the assistants that.
What about the high quality people, like people that eventually become leaders and stuff, people you can count on, let's put it that way. Have you noticed a problem there?
Yes. One thing that's helped in some areas is to advertise for not just for assistants, but assistants with leadership capabilities. And that then raises kind of the bar for applying. And that also means you're going to pay them more. It doesn't mean that you're going to turn them into a leader immediately, but you want people that have that potential. There's always, there are some people that are really day-to-day workers, and that's fine. That's what the world depends upon. They come to work, they do a good job, they go home, live their life, and then come back the next day and do it over. True leaders are the people that are always thinking about what's going on with the office, how can we improve things, how can we be more productive, what is the vision for the office, how do we achieve that? They're people that just naturally think that way. They're hard to find, but if you can identify someone with those capabilities, you've got someone that potentially could be a great leader for your office. But your interview is about more than just their experience in the dental office.
Well, I'll tell you what I've noticed is that we used to have quite a few people that could step up and lead offices, and those people have kind of left, and for whatever reason, some retired, some went to other jobs, some probably went to other offices, but it left a void that's been pretty tough to fill. And I'd like to hear from Dr. Chris Martin on what because we just actually talked about this not too long ago. What his experience has been, as you have 4 offices, and you know, you're trying to fill leadership spots all the time. What have you noticed has changed in, let's say, the last 5 years or so?
Well, I think the beauty of a mastermind, Wes, is that you have this ability to kind of recognize that you're not alone in the suffering. And just hearing Dr. Peterson, underscore that he's hearing it. Wes, obviously you're hearing it. I've heard it in the DEO group as well. One of the leaders of the DEO has 100 practices. He's out of Chicago, and he got up at the last summit meeting last year, and he said, "Okay, guys, let's clear the air. 50% of the people working in your offices right now, you would not have hired pre-COVID." And I was like, "Oh, I'm in the right room. I am in the right room, baby." And and everybody was like, we were like freedom to talk about these things, right? So, I have a problem with TikTok personally. I am on it 12 hours a day, and I rationalize that I'm learning, but I keep getting this regular feed from Dana White, and Dana White is the UFC guy, right? The CEO of that. And he's developed an amazing brand, but he keeps coming around and saying, like, if you have even a little bit of savage in you in this world that we live in right now, you can just crush everybody because nobody wants to do anything. And it's just so easy, and there's so much opportunity. So I think as leaders, we have to basically think that way and be willing to take a risk entrepreneurially and spend the money to go out and market yourself as a savage and say, this is a band of savages. Top dog to track those few good men and women that are out there. We only want the Marines. And we got to take that risk that we're going to have less profit. But I think when we do, we'll get this reputation of like, oh, these are the UFC guys over there. And I've been looking for them. I haven't seen them, but you got to put your money where your mouth is. And I feel like we're seeing that happen with hourly wages. If you drop that out and if you chum the waters with $75 an hour for a hygienist, you'll get some top dogs. If you put 32 an hour for assistants, you immediately see a different level of people coming through. And those people, I think, want to run with the big dogs. And we did it with our doctors years ago. We started paying $1,000 a day guarantee, and suddenly we got a much better population of applicants. We did it with hygiene. Suddenly we're turning away hygienists. Yeah, profit margins suck. I mean, they've gone down, but I'm not going into my office anymore and dealing with these. Dave Ramsey calls them donkeys. He says, "I don't want to work with donkeys. You cannot win the Kentucky Derby donkeys. You got to have thoroughbreds." And I think we're going to have to pay to play.
Yeah, I think
just we don't make any money. we're not losing money, but we're not making the big margins that we maybe used to make. So I think that's just the world we have to make a call. Do we want to make old school pre-COVID profit margins, or do we want to have a life worth living in our practices, essentially?
Unfortunately, inflation is not equal, meaning wages can go up faster than net income. Obviously food and groceries can go up faster than wages. There's a lot of things that factor. I think right now in dentistry, the good people are demanding top wages and basically getting them. And if you're not getting the quote unquote good resumes, good quality candidates, they're, in my experience, they're there. It's just they're commanding much bigger wages. And the question is, like Dr. Martin was saying, are you willing to pay them? Are you willing to take the risk to pay them so that you don't, I would say, quote unquote, lose market share? It's an interesting time right now in dentistry where people aren't willing. There's a lot of dentists out there that aren't willing to pay the extra wages. They get marginal team members, and their practice definitely suffers because of it. And if you are willing to take the risk and spend a couple years where the profit margin might not be quite as good as it could be, but you're building that practice that's a magnet for patients, there's an opportunity here. What would you say about that, Chris?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think we got to play the long game. And, there's a saying in skiing, like if you're looking at your ski tips, you're going to fall, but you got to look down at the lodge here and enjoy the journey. And for me, I love dentistry. I think Whitehall doctors all got into this not just so they could check out, buy a bunch of practices and flip it and put their name on it, put lipstick on a pig and call it awesome dentistry. I mean, my name is still on the building. We have 4 of them, but we're not going to expand until we get that feeling back that, we're proud of going into the building and putting our name on these crowns. Billings come out of here and the team. And, we're still clipping some donkeys, man. We still got some C players in our team. And it sucks, but I don't want to sell it and, sit at home or whatever and watch YouTube all day or the idea of sitting on a beach for me and just chilling is not, I think that gets old. So I think it's worth the risk. I think in 2 years we'll have a reputation office, best team, and I think our profit margins will come back. And it does. If it doesn't, who cares? I mean, I'm not going to go in there and just not like the people that I work with.
Yeah, you'd much rather have quality people than that 1 or 2% that it costs you.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a 10% margin and you're proud of it, I'd rather have that than a 13 or 15% margin and just have just constant turnover and people that I don't enjoy working there.
Yeah, Dr. Peterson, he brought up your hygiene model a little bit, which I think a lot of people have struggled with hygiene. You mind just sharing with everybody what you guys decided to do about a year ago and kind of how it worked out? I know that it's made a difference. So you had trouble; you couldn't hire one hygienist.
No, so I live right next to my office. We have one of our hall, the original office, the biggest one. We built for 28 years. It's in a shopping center a mile from my office. And so all of my neighbors have been coming over there. And so I found when the hygienists all took off, I started getting letters, like literally letters in my mailbox of just completely angry neighbors in my neighborhood. And I'm like, oh gosh, what's this? The crown doesn't fit, or we're charging too much, or whatever. No, all the complaints I was getting was like, I can't get in for a cleaning. You canceled my cleaning appointment. It was all of them just mad as wet hen because they clean. And so I was like, okay, well, clearly the market has spoken. They want their cleanings. They don't care if the crown's not fitting or be charging too much. They didn't even say you charge too much for a cleaning. They just said you keep canceling my cleaning appointments. So the big problem was hygiene, and because that's our recurrent revenue stream, and we were seeing same day taper off, and patients were mad and staff was all stressed out because people are mad on the phones because of the cleaning situation. I sat down with Greg Stanley, God rest his soul, before he died. One of the last piece of advice he gave us was, Chris, 75 an hour. Like, for who? The doctors? Like, we're already paying that. He goes, no, the hygienists. And I said, okay, done. Because every time Greg ever told me anything and I did it and just stayed the course, it ended up working out like 9 out of 10 times. So for us, we stayed that course, and we created a kind of a concept called the Doctor of Dental Hygiene. And so now we're paying them doctor wages, but we're holding them accountable to building their assistants up as we have to build up assistants for the doctors. We're paying assistants $20 an hour. We pay the hygienist 75 an hour, but they run 3 rooms. So now they have to do 4 cleanings a day in the new patient world. So all new patients get a cleaning, and in order to make it work, they have to get a cleaning typically. And then they have 2 columns of regular recall, which is the hygiene cauldron. So we didn't lose money on it. We're still at about 50% overhead in that department. So it's still horrible. However, I'm not getting any more complaints about not having capacity for cleanings. And it is a lost leader, but we're getting lots of same day coming down there. We're able to serve the new patients and get the cleanings that they want. And we're turning away hygienists now. So I'll take it. It's working. We're back on track, and we're not going to go back from it.
If I, Chris,
Yeah.
what you've just said is what I've seen in a couple of offices, and it's absolutely true. The difference on your profit margins, you can make it back if your systems are really strong, meaning your hygienists are identifying treatment opportunities, you're getting them over, you're doing the same day service. Even though you're paying what we used to pay doctors 6-7 years ago, for the hygienist, you can still make that up. If you can do an extra few crowns a day, since you've got multiple doctors, that's a huge jump in your profitability, because you've already covered all your daily costs. Those
Well,
are
the thing is, the
costs.
demand, Doc, is there still for perio. I mean for prophies. There's a lot of demand still for cleanings, and we found that 2,600 to 3,000 a day is very doable in 3 columns.
Yes.
And if you've got but you have to have a dedicated assistant for each of those columns. You can't do the quote unquote assisted model. It has to be 3 assistants for 3 rooms, highly compensated.
Yeah, and that's expensive, but with the correct systems, it'll pay off.
Well, it's either that or you don't.
Yeah, if you can get to about, that's right. Yeah, there's no middle ground, really. Not in Raleigh.
So we tested out in his practice running ads for hygienists we started at 50. So they hired a bunch of hygienists, they got it all working, and we just want to test, would people respond at $55? And then we did $60. Then we did 65. Then we did 70. It's 75. That in his market, that's what gets hygienists and good ones through the door, where you get to kind of be picky, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, they're good ones. Like we got control back, yeah, for sure.
And I would say the same thing for dental assistants is what I've seen. There's a certain point where all the good ones start showing up. Now, can you
32 or 30?
32? Yeah, in every market's a little different, but there's a certain dollar amount that you have to pay to get access to good quality assistance. So one of the things I'm doing a lot is trying to figure out where that marketing point is to attract good resumes, and then going back into the office and looking at where everybody's pay is at and deciding, is it worth it to raise everybody else at or near this level so that we can add an assistant. So you kind of got to decide what's at stake. So let's say, we got to raise everybody up a few dollars an hour. It ends up being $10 an hour so that we can hire somebody. Does that make sense? You got to do the math on it, and whatever the raises are we losing out in opportunity cost? And so you usually want to do the 2 or 4-to-1 ratio or 3-to-1 ratio. So if your expenses go up by $1, you got to get at least 3 back, but probably 4. And so you've got to see, is there enough demand in the practice where that if I made that change, added that assistant, let's say, raised the pay of my other assistants, could we make that up, is the question. And in some offices, yes, and some offices, no. And so you definitely have to look at each, somebody else wants in here, so hold on. Each office is a little different. When you've got demand, usually it pays off. Did you have to go through something like that with assistants, Dr. Martin?
Yeah, I mean, we're still going through it. I mean, I think it's just hard. Like Wes and I, we've had this discussion about, I keep having this vision of an AWOL practice where we have 15% net, and I had to let go of that. Like, it's just not going to happen. And we decided, well, if we get 12, 11 is like our goal, and me not have to be there and produce, I mean, I'll still take it, but the goal ultimately in a healthy dental practice should be around 15%, I believe. But again, it's just, beggars can't be choosers. We don't get what labor still holds your highest cost.
Hopefully he's still there. What do you think is causing you not to be able to get to that elusive 15%?
Just everything's gone up. And it's mostly the staff cost is way out of control. We're still running it. Our P&L is right around 35% all in for our staff. So again, it's just a really difficult pill to swallow, but you know, because of Greg's help and Wes's help, we've been able to, I mean, I still have this pretty cool life where, you know, I practiced for 28 years and I still love dentistry, but I can do it now because I want to. And I've got different kind of headaches, like building systems and all of that stuff. But, you know, if you do follow the Whitehall principles, you can build that AWOL practice where you're just not tied to the chair. If you want to go in and produce, you can, and make more money. I could get all of my production back tomorrow if I wanted to. And, you know, Wes teaches you with sedation, you know, how to get to 150, 160 a month production personally, if you want to do it. But I think ultimately we're all trying to build a business here that we're proud of, that we still own, that we can go into and out of at any time. And I still think, but you do have to take that hit on the idea that you're not going to have 35% quote unquote profit.
If you're not doing the work, right.
If you're not coming to work,
yeah.
But there's a lifestyle change. I mean, you're trading money for your time. And, you know, time with your family, time with your fitness, time with your, you know, working on the business versus working in the business. So I would, at this stage in my career at 53, I would rather be in this position where I control the business. And if I want to go back in and make more money, I can, or I can just keep working on systematizing it. So it is a great place to work and to be a patient. And it's kind of neat to just be able to step back and build out your ops manual, you know, build out your marketing, work with your team more, and get over these humps of like the weakness in the market with employees.
What you talked about the Whitehall principles that you follow. Like if you were to distill, I know there's quite a few that we talk about, but if you were to distill down the things that really propelled you to get where you're at, how would you, describe them for everyone?
Well, I mean, we call them the 5 Gospels of Whitehall. I mean, and I got them I made an infographic for each one of them. We teach them to everybody, but I still, the thing that really got me hooked on Whitehall years ago was the idea of 100% case acceptance. It was Greg's cassette tapes, and there were like 4 of them. It was like 4 hours long, and he had a text that went with it. But I was like, wow, 100% case acceptance. Patients are going to love me, and they're going to do everything I tell them to do or ask them to do. And it was absolutely not that. It was literally a treatise on, you know, the teachings of Jesus. And I don't mean that in a weird way, but it was do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And you treat people, you tell people what they need, and you give them what they want. And when you do that, you win the heart and mind and trust of these patients. And it's the practice this the doctor you always wanted to be, was the guy that loved his patients, that took good care of them, you know, was compensated well for it. But you're compensated, you sleep at night because you're proud of the fact that you've got a place where you can go and make a true impact and help people. And that was the whole message. I mean, he hooked me with 100% case acceptance, and then he landed me on the boat with treat people right, you know. And I still believe that's the biggest piece of Whitehall that I think that's Greg's gift to the world, I think, for dentistry.
Yeah, 100%. So you said there's 5 things. I know the 5, but
yeah. Well, I can repeat them. I'll tell you. So number 2 is staff-driven practice. So once you figure out how to do a good filling in a crown, then you got to teach that to your team, how to do a good filling in a crown and talk about it. And then give the team the ability and the authority to go in there and talk about a filling in a crown. And what we're trying to avoid by doing a filling in a crown is a root canal. If we can avoid that, man, well, that's a good thing. So let me talk to you about, let me show you this cavity. Let me get you some ballpark estimates on this. Now, I'm not the doctor, but I'll go get the doctor and tell him what we talked about. Would you like to stay today and do that? Well, that's staff-driven practice in a nutshell. Then the doctor comes in and says, oh yeah, you need a filling and maybe a crown, probably not a root canal. It's good. If you'd like to stay today, we may be able to do that for you. That's the staff-driven practice.
The drive and motivation isn't just solely from the doctor. Let's just put
right. Yeah. And then you really take care of your team. You bonus them when they do a good job for you.
Okay. So that's number 2. What's number 3?
So then I would say your hygiene cauldron would probably number 3 in terms of importance, because that's the way you don't ever blow people out of the water. If they don't want to do it today, if they are a little skeptical about you, but they like you. They say, you know what, I'm going to stamp you as my dentist. I'm going to sign off. I like you, but I'm not quite ready. Hygiene Cauldron is the place they go to come back and prove to you that they still like you. That's called recurrent revenue stream in any business. So it's, the fortune in any business is a follow-up, and your repeat customers are your best customers a long term. I mean, y'all, yeah, blow the new patient's mind every time, but the way you blow a new patient's mind is you never overwhelm them. You say, look, this is what you need. I know you want a cleaning. Would you like the cleaning today? Perfect. When you're ready, let's do the rest of your treatment, but let's not let you leave without getting back on our recall schedule. And so having a full hygiene schedule still is the engine that drives general dental practices over the humps of the peaks and valleys. And that's why we had to go back to hygiene. I mean, it was kind of like whatever it takes thing. We had to get hygiene back because that's the recurrent revenue stream that's gotten us through, crazy election years or, COVID or whatever, knowing that you've got this raving fan base that still considers you their dentist because they can get in for a cleaning. Hygiene Cauldron is like huge in this model, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it is. It, like you said, it's the lifeblood of the practice, and it is the
Yep.
practice, essentially.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So number 4, what is?
So I would go with the new patient development pathway. You never get a second chance to make a great first impression, and so we teach our clinical administrators that treat every day like day one. And on day one of your practice, you got no patients. The very first person you're going to blow their mind after you've treated your staff well and got them some coffee and donuts, we're looking at that first new patient. Do they have the best experience in the world? Is it a world class from start to finish? From the minute they walk through the door, they're greeted like a king. They're walked back. They're pre-assessed. They have a nice clean office. They create some urgency. We tell you what you need. We give you what you want. You inform the doctor. The doctor comes in. The doctor's also on the same page with the staff-driven team. Doctor says, this is what I think, and they create that urgency in that moment. The patient buys the dentistry in the chair. Then they have great treatment coordination at the end that ties up the bow and makes sure the financial arrangements are taken care of, and then reappoints for the treatment, whether that be today or next day. The patient has options, but it's a symphony of things that need to happen that Whitehall has truly mastered, and it's 12 steps, 10 to 12 depending on who you are, but we basically feel like there's 12. And if you just work on each one of those and train your team not to drop the ball along the way, the new patient development pathway is basically that Amazon.com concept of every day is day one. So you got to master the new patient development pathway.
Yeah, there's many different people the new patient encounters in the practice, and if done right, your team has to be, I don't want to say fully scripted, but it's got to be like a symphony. Everybody's got to be on the same page and know exactly what they're going to say and how they're going to say it. And then that comes back to, you got to have great employees to do it too,
Yeah, smart, driven, and then motivated. And there needs to be a bonus for them in there that works.
Right. Okay. And then the last thing.
So this is Wes's baby, same day service.
That's
it is a service, and the team has to buy in that your people don't want dentistry, and if they're going to get it, you got to get them while they're hot. So they came in, they saw you, they like you, you've done everything right. When you can offer people today to get it done, they will do it 50% of the time, even regular people that aren't even hurting or anything. It's like, yeah, I'm here and I trust you. I think I'll go ahead and do that today. So offering that option can really, if you have capacity, it can take your practice to the next level. And that's where the profit comes in, honestly. Like if you have an extra room at all times, all you really need is one room. You can do $4,000 a day out of that room every single day with one assistant, one extra room. You can add $4,000 to $10,000 a day, depending on your team and what kind of dentistry you're doing. But it's almost like clockwork. Just, one of the Whitehall tenants was they were capacity fanatics. So but you don't need 14 rooms. We've gotten into that trouble too, where too many rooms,
too much,
too many staff. You don't want to have too much capacity, but you do have to be able to add without blowing the team out of the water. So that's a little fine line that you have to dance as an entrepreneur. Don't get too big in facility and team, but have enough that you could have at least one assistant in the bullpen that can come out and do a root canal, build up and crown. You just added $4,000 to your day.
You guys routinely will, in your offices, go from 10,000, 12,000 a day, and it'll end up 24, 25,
Yeah.
even up to 30.
Oh, yeah.
Where doubling a day is not really uncommon for you guys.
Well,
When
it used to be every day we could do it, but with the new world we're living in with these weak staff members and they're unmotivated, a lot of them, it's been a lot harder, but we still do it. It just feels more now like a sprint than it used to be. So
most of these people listening, they'd be lucky if they even doing same day service bonuses and stuff, they might add 10, 20% to their day.
Mm.
How now, of course, how do you actually get that to happen? How have you gotten everybody, the culture ingrained into your practices that this is how we operate? What have you done to?
well, I still think that you do have to have bonus in place, and I think the right people, the thoroughbreds, are still motivated by money, and you don't want people that just want a job, that just come in there. It's like, give me my paycheck, I'll do the bare minimum that I can do to get my hourly, and then I'm out. Those are the wrong people. So you want people that still like to do hard things.
Right.
So that's been hard to find in this world, but when you do find them, you're paying them $30 an hour, and those people still tend to still want that extra $10. So, I think it is going out and finding the thoroughbreds now. But before, a lot of people would do it for an extra $10. So our model is $10 still.
Yeah.
If you're an assistant and you do another filling, we'll give you $10. If we still have it in hygiene, if you're an assistant in hygiene and you talk to them about their crown, you get $5. And then if the assistant picks it up, they do $5. So I think it's still a motivator. But you also have to just be excited about, as an owner, like, this is what we do, and it is a service, and you have to, every 3 months we have to bring it back, though. You can't, it's like church, like, you got to have a revival, and you talk about these 5 gospels every stinking 3 months or so, and a lot of times same day service is the one that falls off.
It's very much you have to preach this and
Yeah.
keep on bringing it up, these things,
Right.
so the team doesn't lose, because you get distracted by all kinds of different things, and then all of a sudden same day service starts to disappear.
Yeah. Mhm.
Hygiene cauldron, we're not filling hygiene, all these things just start to evaporate.
Yeah.
And so you've distilled it down to these 5 things. If we
Yeah.
focus on these 5 things, we're going to
Yeah.
do pretty darn good.
Well, I think one of the things, Wes, that we failed as leaders is we think it's kind of condescending or rude or boring sometimes for us to talk about the same old thing over and over again. But
Yeah.
but I go back to biblical stuff, and maybe it's just the Southern Baptist in me, but I don't remember them adding any chapters to the Bible in the last 2,000 years. Like, it's still the same text, and every Sunday they get up and say the same thing over and over, and Wednesday night, and sometimes Sunday evening. But if it's true, it's true. I mean, I'm not even beating the Bible here. I'm not. You can pick your ancient text if you want to, but you don't get to, as a leader. I think it's actually doing the hard things over and over again is what turns you from an entrepreneur into an executive. Executives are the ones that understand that it's consistency and doing the hard stuff, which is the boring talk about the truth all the time, and then recognizing it when it's failing or your team doesn't get it. And as you lose people and lose culture, you have to go back to church. You have to have a revival sometimes. But if these people don't get the spirit, or they're not coming, you got backsliders, man. You got to get them right with Jesus, and or they got to go. I mean, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, to keep the culture right, you got to stay on top of it. You got to read the Bible verses and
Yeah.
everybody,
The 10 Commandments, the
Yep.
5 Gospels of Whitehall.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and it never ends, and it's a really big deal to keep repeating yourself, and just kind of don't get tired of it.
I wanted to also, I struggle with doctors. Obviously, I work with all you guys, doctors out here. When we start getting into discounts and getting into, some people get mad about membership discounts and all the, uh, being in network and all that kind of stuff. They
Right.
they can get a little bent out of shape about all that kind of stuff. Tell me your philosophies on kind of, overhead and BAM and giving discounts to get across the line and
Right.
profit surges, even though you're giving discounts.
Well, Greg taught us, the idea of yield-based scheduling. But I'm like, what's that? And he talk to me about airlines, how they work. And it's really, it's common sense to us. And you see it all the time because, like, if I want to fly to see US, Paris, or wherever you are right now, it looks like you're in Arizona right now. But if I got to fly to Phoenix tonight, I'm going to pay a premium for that. And I already know it. But it's an emergency. I got to get out there. I'm going to pay for it. But if I book that flight to Phoenix in three months from now, I know I'm going to get a better deal. So one of the things it's like reverse. If you're slow as molasses tomorrow, I think it's important to not, we get caught up in like making it all about the money. And it really should be about serving the most amount of people. And
right.
Money comes when you help the most amount of people. I mean, Amazon makes all the money because they figured out how to serve you instantaneously with a magic button you touch on your camera. And you'll pay whatever because it's just, you don't even look at it because it's so convenient. Well, when you have an opening tomorrow and the day is wide open, you can just use a script and teach your team the scripting of, hey, John, I was calling to, let's see, I know you got tomorrow at 7:40, but my doctor has an opening today. We came in, we got nothing going on. I'm authorized to give you 10% off for tomorrow morning if you'd like to come in and get that and take advantage of that. And then if they say, let me get back to you, well, then you create that urgency. You're like, well, that's great. You were first on my list. I can't offer that to 10 o'clock this morning. It's probably going to fill, but I'm going to be, if somebody else calls in and wants it, I'm going to be offering that to them. So yield-based scheduling is like the seats are going to fill. They always do. So I'd rather have 90% than nothing for the next 3 hours. And then the team has to understand that that's the way the world works. It's just basic supply and demand. And dentistry can do that if you do it in a way that is, ethical, and your team gets behind it and the staff is given authority to drive that. Then you can, I'd rather have my team practicing and helping. And we teach our doctors too, our associate doctors. I'm like, I've never had an associate doctor come to me in 15 years and say, I just hate giving these discounts. What they come to me and they say is, I hate being slow. I've never looked up at the end of the day and thought, man, I didn't get paid but 90% for my crowns. If I was busy all day doing 90% crowns, I would be thrilled. And it always works out. And I think the universe, you give somebody a break in the morning and get the ball moving, get the energy up, suddenly everybody's energized and things start to happen, is what I've seen. But I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't book them out, days in advance or even in the afternoon, a discount. You do it first thing in the morning and get the day moving. That's what we try to teach.
Okay. You have a saying, there's nothing more expensive in dentistry than an empty chair.
Yeah.
There, the clock is ticking. So if you've got a day that's empty, you're far better off by giving discounts to fill that day than to just let it be and let it.
Yeah, man. And I tell you, we talk to our doctors too, all of our associate doctors. I'm like, look, do you want to? It's not called dental perfect. It's called dental practice. And I'm telling you, you're far from perfect, and so am I. So you're never going to get good unless you practice. So it don't matter if it's 20% or 80% or 120%. If you aren't mastering your craft, you're never going to be able to monetize it. Just like a YouTube video, like you don't turn on a YouTube and put $1 in the slot and say, oh, please play a YouTube video now. You watch YouTube, it's free essentially. But the ones that have millions of followers, if you've noticed, every 30 seconds, they're playing an ad. So what they're doing though, is they're creating such valuable content that people want to sponsor that. You're never going to get great associates if they're not busy, either doing staff dentistry, doing discounted dentistry, doing, full fee. But I teach them, like, you can sit around docs all you want to and talk about how you want to be good at implants and get full fee for them. Well, if you've never done one, you need to start discounting your fee and get really good at it. And then once you're really good at it and you can confidently sell them or talk to patients about them, then monetize that, and then get your full fee. So again, it goes back, if you've got staff that have nothing to do and they're milling around with nothing to do, I would rather do free extractions or free dentistry and get them trained than to just, or send them home,
Right. But you said to try to do that the first part of the day get the energy right, get the vibe going.
Yep.
If it doesn't pick up, then you'd send them home.
Yeah, if it doesn't pick up and you guys trained a little bit first thing in the morning and it's just dead, it's absolutely, you have no choice but to send people home. I mean, I would never advocate for you losing money. Doctors, you deserve to have, if you're not making 150K every year as a dentist, do something different.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. Go be an associate somewhere.
Yeah.
But you can do very, very well in the Whitehall model with these things we're talking about, I think.
Tell me about marketing. As far as, first, let's start with, like, do you have a percentage you like to stick by and try to get spent every month regardless? Or are you yeah, tell me your philosophies on percentages and marketing and what
Well,
you do.
I'll tell you a story about that. So my wife has this beautiful friend. She's 6'7". She played basketball. My wife played basketball at UNC on the national championship team. She had a friend that was 6'7", looks like a supermodel. I mean, just drop dead gorgeous, but she's 6'7". So the pool of guys that can be comfortable dating her fairly limited, you might think, right? Well, she kind of messed around in college and didn't find the guy. She was kind of nervous, whatever. Kind of waiting, holding out too long, and she ended up marrying a guy who was 5'6". Because she waited too long, and the clock was ticking, so she signed up for this 5'6" guy. Okay, well, worked for a while. They had a couple kids, beautiful kids. They're all tall, everything's cool, but they ended up getting a divorce. And so she's a single mom with these two kids, and she'd schlep them up here to Raleigh, and she'd come up, and we would have a fun time. And then she'd just keep complaining about how she couldn't get a man and nobody's going to date her and this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, you got to market yourself. You can't sit around and wait for who's going to come find you. You're 6'7" and you're sitting in your apartment in Florida all the time, hoping that a guy finds you, right? I said, you got to market yourself because you're very valuable. I mean, you're still gorgeous and you're a national champion and you're blue eyes and blonde hair and you look like a model. What the heck? And ironically though enough, she had marketed herself well enough in college that a guy 7'1" remembered her and called her out of the blue, believe it or not, and said, hey, I'd like to date you. And they ended up getting married. Now they have 2 kids. So my story didn't really play out the way I'm trying to tell it here, but if you got something of value, you have to market it. And so I've always felt like no matter what, we're going to spend 5% of our P&L telling the world about us. And I don't care what it is, but I think you have to bite that bullet and do the 5% marketing. Even if you're in a small town, I mean, you could have the biggest practice in 3 counties, I think, if you spend 5% on your P&L. I mean, I think there's opportunity cost by not telling people how great you are if you're great. So.
When you guys you did a couple cold starts, 2 cold starts, right?
We did.
Right.
Yeah.
When you launch those, obviously you can't do 5% because 5% of nothing's nothing, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what did you budget to get them out of the gates? What did you say? Okay, we're going to spend 6,000 a month. What number?
Yeah. So I think what we do is you kind of do your market research on like the flow, like the number of dentists per capita, and then you start to kind of predict, okay, how many new patients do I need to get to $60,000 a month the first month? So we know on average in our other locations that they spend about $1,000 a month, right? That's a pretty good number of case acceptance or case. An average person will spend $1,000 if you're doing it well, 900 to 1,000.
First month, right? Yeah.
Right, first month. So you got no patients. So you got to do your math and think, all right, if I do 100 new patients a month and they spend $1,000 each, 100,000. Okay, what's my budget for that? Well, it'd be 5,000. Well, that I've got nobody the first day. So we basically double or triple it. So we're going to spend on a cold start. If we got a good shot at getting 100,000, we got a minimum of 5,000 we got to spend. We're probably going to spend 10 to 15,000 that first month.
Yeah.
Just to get the ball up and rolling. And it would mean mailers. It would mean definitely Google and get yourself at the top of Google, pay-per-click, go crazy, but spend the 15,000 and then you can ratchet it back because, once in those high mover locations where there's a lot of demand, we actually could just spend 2 or 3% now if we wanted to. because there's so many new patients there.
Now, when you say spend the money, tell the world, doesn't mean that you just stick with one thing. You've moved around and tried things. You've done TV, you've done print. I don't know if you've
Yep,
done
radio.
billboards.
Yeah.
So you are, I would call you a guy who likes marketing. Is that fair to
Yeah, I
say?
like marketing. Yeah, I like telling the world about us. It's fun, but I do think you kind of need to like it, but you don't have to do all the ad generation. You just have to write the check, and then
But you don't stick, like if something's not working, you're not going to stick with it. You're going to move it around.
yeah. But I think you got to go 90 days with something. Like you need to spend at least 90 days. 6 months is better, and as long as you're getting a decent amount of new patients, I think a good number is 40 to 50 per doctor per month. If you can stay in that zone, you're good. Now you'll get ups and downs with quality from time to time, but I still think Google, I think 70 to 80% of your marketing should still be Google for general dentistry. Unfortunately, that's the number. We were at 100% for years, and that's not a good idea, but it's still the best bang for the buck, I think.
Yeah. And if you were to ballpark the cost per new patient, what's it to be?
I think it's between 150 and 250. It's still kind of where we're at, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
So
And that's marketed in, right?
Yeah.
So other patients through staff and from other patients, but as far as the marketing of driving.
Yeah, I mean we're like 5% of our P&L, and if we're doing 18, 19 million, I mean you do the math on that. So whatever that math is, it's a lot. It's about $800,000 a year is their budget. So but it sounds like a crazy number, but if you do that, it grows. I mean, it depends on how big you want to go, but I think just don't be afraid to do it. We weren't always at 18 million,
Right. What as marketing go, obviously that comes up with the phone. How big of a problem has the phone? Does it come and go, the phone problems, as far as when I say the phone, answering the phone, hey guys,
well,
institute, all that stuff?
Yeah, man. I mean, so I've run off a bunch of staff members by doing calling our offices because I get so pissed off at how awful it is. And I've had multiple people just quit because they think I'm crazy. They think this guy's nuts. But you know what? I'm happy that they left because they were answering the phone like just crap. So the most valuable, the most important piece of equipment in a dental office is the telephone still. And we put these duds sometimes, these donkeys, no offense to these weak people that don't care, on our phones. The $15 an hour person goes right on the phones first thing. We're still doing that, Wes, by the way. We got to stop.
Yeah.
But what's helped us is committing to Jay Geyer's Scheduling Institute, because it's a third party that calls in and tests your people and gives you scores. And it's like that threat from outside of it's not me calling anymore. I quit doing it. So even with Jay Geyer, though, you still have to follow up. Somebody has to follow up. And part of our protocol is I hope we're still doing it, but every operations meeting, our office managers will call their office just to QC the phones and make sure that it's being answered right. Yeah, and you'll be appalled by some of the stuff you hear. If you ever do this, you will want to shoot yourself. I mean, it's so bad.
They can lose a massive amount. They can take good marketing and make it bad.
Yeah, I would fix the phones first. And if you don't want to do it yourself, which I don't recommend you do, just sign up for Jay Geyer and have everybody 5-star certified. It's like, I don't know, it's like $300 or $400 a month, and it's worth every penny.
The other thing you guys do is that line, so AI recorded calls, and that's also very helpful, which I've been talking about with this group. So if you guys haven't heard of that, it's called LIINE, and it's AI software, records all your phone calls, and then it listens, through AI and categorizes when it sounds like a new patient, and it figures out, did they schedule or did they not schedule? Why did they schedule? And it gives you a report, and by team member, it actually learns the team member's voice, And so you can look at each team member's performance. It's really cool software. It's not all that much. It's a couple $100, I think $300 a month. So if you're spending, I would say if you're spending $3,000-4,000 a month in marketing, you should invest in that. And I get nothing out of that, just so you know. That's a full-on endorsement of that company. So yeah, so that's been also very helpful. But yeah, good marketing, bad phones. And sometimes it's hard to know which is which without the software. You can just swear that your marketing company is awful, and it ends up it's your team.
Yeah, and that's the cheapest marketing ever is just start QCing your phones. Like literally you can go up 20% in like a day or maybe a week just by getting somebody watching your phones. And it doesn't have to be you. If you could just say to the office manager, like, look, tell your team I'm going to be calling and make sure you guys are doing it. And you'll probably lose a couple people because they don't want that pressure, some of them. But depending on your relationship with your team and your office managers, you can do it yourself, but it'll still fall off because your managers are forget. They don't, it's like out of sight, out of mind because they're not answering the phones all day long. But if you do the Jay Geyer thing, which that was the first thing that got me, the first thing I did with Whitehall 20 years ago, 18 years ago, was like, I just signed up for Jay Geyer and immediately we went up, oh gosh, we went up 30% the first month just because we were answering the phones right.
It's a huge problem. And it's, if I could say, you know, out of the 5 gospels that you got, I would add that as
Yeah. Answer the phones.
Answer the phones right.
Yeah.
If you made your life
Well,
about,
it's in there, Wes. It's actually new patient development pathway.
true, that's right.
It's the
Yep,
phones. Yep.
you're right. So it is in there. So yeah, our new patient development pathway has that in there. If you just make your life about those 5 things and perfect those 5 things, learning about those 5 things, and pushing that message to your team to where they repeat it in their sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how you build a practice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's 100%. Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Let's open it up real quick. I know we're running out of time. And does anybody have any questions? Let's start there. And any questions for us, Dr. Chris? You can unmute. Everybody's shy in this group here. That's okay. So I really enjoyed having you on. Thanks for sharing with us today. Dr. Peterson, do you got any questions for Dr. Martin before we let him go?
I would just emphasize again, you could still be very profitable and do quite well paying those kind of salaries, but you better be sure your systems are in order and that your people are performing so that your hygienists are finding and converting opportunities into actual same-day service. Because as Dr. Martin said, there's nothing that makes a difference on a day-to-day basis as fast as same-day service.
I'd like to comment on that. Is what I've seen in the P&Ls where we've had to raise pay and all that kind of stuff. And we have, to be honest, we haven't kept up with the net. And it appears like it's cost about 2%. Meaning if we just stayed at paying these wages and didn't increase, we would have eroded our patient experience. We'd have trouble hiring hygienists, and our practices would really actually declined. We in our practices, we've had to raise our staff's wages, and yes, it's cost us about 2% in the P&L across the board. That'll come back, but it'll take time. It'll just take a year or two as fees get increased and as insurance adjusts. But yeah, that's just the reality of it right now.
Well, interestingly enough, Wes, I'll just add to that. So 2 of our cold starts were basically DSOs that shut down because they didn't keep up and they didn't train their staff. They didn't have owner doctors that cared. And the thing that I still love about Whitehall, and I know this from everybody on this group, I've known a lot of you guys for a long time. I see the faces and I know how much you care about your practice and your team and your patients. And I'm not selling the DSOs. I think the hidden cost to dentistry right now of like two of the DSOs that we took, or the businesses that we took over, they just gutted them. I mean, they just left. They just ghosted them because they were losing money, $50,000 a month, because they didn't have good staff and they didn't invest in their team and they didn't raise their pay and they didn't have owner doctors that were engaged in there that cared. And so that was an opportunity for us to go in there and take over, because we do care, and we've just followed these systems and we backfilled. And we took a practice that was an old vacant space that was doing nothing and is doing $300,000 a month just using these Whitehall systems. Now it's still hard as crap, and I got to go over there and teach and train and all that stuff. But I think dental-owned dental practices are still important, and Whitehall does teach that. And there's just so much opportunity. Like I said, there's a few savages out there that really still care about dentistry. The DSOs don't care, and there's not enough. And the ones that do sell to the DSOs, they stop caring because they get their millions of dollars, and then they're like, I don't need to do this anymore. I don't want to do this. So if you still want to do it, these DSOs are going to be falling off left and right, is my take on it. There's going to be a few that are going to be good, that are going to figure it out, but they're only going to do it because dentistry is so dadgum hard. There's only going to be a few of them that are successful because they've figured out a way to engage the owner doctors and the guys that have been there doing it for a long time, that really do care and want to do good patient service. Those patients are going to go, and they're going to pay for the good dentistry. And the ones that don't do it, they're going to go out of business. And we already took over 2 spaces because of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. So it's going to be interesting what happens, but I would say invest in your team, invest in their education, invest in their pay so that you keep them, the good ones, and that you can recruit better ones. If it means taking a little bit of a hit, take the hit. Because if you stay in this pattern where you're trying to get away with something and you're going to lose ground, you're going to lose market share in time. So yeah. All right, thanks for listening, you guys. Thanks, Dr. Martin, for joining us.